Critical pieces of Russia's energy infrastructure are today in shambles. A significant portion of its oil refining capacity is no longer operable. Energy shortages are being felt all across Russia today. At the same time, Iran's military has been severely degraded. Both Russia and Iran still refuse to accept plans for lasting peace. Russia and Iran respond only to strength, not to statements. It is time for the Senate to act, and act decisively, and to work toward lasting peace. Mr. President, today is the day to pass the Lindsey Graham sanctions bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Alaska.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is there a quorum call?
Yes.
I'd like to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'd like to echo and reinforce the words of my good friend, Senator Barrasso, the majority whip, senator from Wyoming, who's doing a great job, about yesterday and the beautiful service that we had here in the Capitol and at the National Cathedral in honor of my very good friend and Senate colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham. And, you know, the eulogies were great. It was a beautiful service. He was, as I mentioned, a dear friend, colleague, a patriot, a veteran, a staunch advocate for his state, South Carolina, a staunch advocate for the Senate, and a staunch advocate for a strong America. As Senator Barrasso just said, peace through strength, in the sense of American freedom, not just at home, but abroad. He was one of a kind, witty, brilliant, certainly, Mr. President, as you know, one of our nation's most important and influential senators. He had a great sense of humor. He loved to laugh. And a lot of us here on the Senate floor are talking about his legacy and what we should be doing to honor that legacy. Well, I think one of the things we should be doing, and we're doing it right now, and it's great, is this sanctions bill against Russia, against Iran. And Senator Graham has been leading the efforts on this sanctions bill for a couple years now. And we're passing it here in the Senate in overwhelming bipartisan fashion. Over 80 senators voted to get on the bill last night. I know Lindsey's looking down from heaven, very proud. He made this happen. I was honored to be an original co-sponsor of this bill from the very, very beginning, working with him on these issues. And we got more to do. I have a very analogous sanctions bill with regard to China and Taiwan. Another way we need to honor Senator Graham, and it's not happening, and it's kind of a new thing. Got the minority whip coming to the floor, and I hope he can maybe respond to this. But it's a new thing, Mr. President, that I've never seen actually in my career, and we need to change it. And what that is getting on the National Defense Authorization Act to start debating it, and working on a defense supplemental because we need it. Now, we're talking about honoring Lindsey Graham. I know Lindsey Graham really, really well, knew Lindsey Graham really, really well. I guarantee you Lindsey Graham would be on the Senate floor right now saying, wait, we're moving our sanctions bill forward? Great. Bipartisan? Great. What about the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that funds our military, pay raises for our troops, came out of the Armed Services Committee in a big bipartisan vote, and then came to the Senate floor, screeching halt, because the minority leader blocked it. By the way, I've been in the Senate almost 12 years. I've never seen that happen in my entire career. The bill that funds our military, that lays out the strategy and top-line number for our military during a dangerous time, is blocked by the Senate Democrats. Lindsey Graham would be on the floor raising hell about that. I've never seen it happen. And I've never had anyone on the other side of the aisle explain to me, why are you blocking the bill that came out of committee in a strong bipartisan way during these dangerous times? You're blocking the bill to fund our military, to take care of our troops? Unprecedented, Mr. President. So if we want to honor Lindsey Graham, which we all do, let's not just vote for the sanctions bill, but let's get on the NDAA and start debating it. I haven't heard one Democrat senator give a reason why they're blocking it. I've never seen this happen. Mr. President, this is new territory. Let me give you another one that I know Lindsey Graham would be on the floor right now advocating with me on. We need a defense supplemental. Okay, when President Biden was president and Senator Schumer was majority leader, the Biden White House sent over a defense supplemental on Ukraine. Now, senators like myself, Senator Graham, others, we said, all right, we'll look at that. We'll work on that. We'll improve it. We'll make it better. We think it's important for the national defense of our nation, which it was. We put a lot in there for the defense industrial base, which we did. We beefed up stuff relating to China and Taiwan, which made it a better bill. We beefed up elements of that bill to make it stronger with regard to Israel and Iran, made it a better bill, and then we worked on it together. We made it a stronger bill, and then senators like myself and Senator Graham whipped other Republicans to get it passed, and we got it passed. It was a bipartisan defense supplemental, primarily for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and our defense industrial base. Now we need a defense industrial base supplemental for us, for America, for our troops, for our munitions. A couple years ago, when the Biden administration with Senator Schumer in the majority, that happened, and a number of us, myself and Senator Graham, were like, all right, we'll roll up our sleeves and work with you guys. What's happening on the defense supplemental now? No cooperation. No one on the other side of the aisle wants to help our troops, wants to help our munitions. Mr. President, this is new territory. I've been here 2 terms, and on defense issues with Senator Graham, and by the way, many other great senators on the other side of the aisle, we have always locked arms, said we're going to move forward on the NDAA. We're going to move forward on a defense supplemental if our troops need it. And what's happening right now is new. It's different, and I think it's really bad for the country. And you know who would be down on the Senate floor right now with me, making the same arguments that I am? Senator Graham would be. So let's keep talking about honoring Senator Graham. I love that guy. I'm going to miss him every day. Such a great leader, so important to the Senate. My view, probably the most important senator here, given his work, given his relationship with the president. But let's not say we're going to honor Senator Graham and then we're going to block the NDAA. Lindsey Graham wouldn't be doing that. And we're going to not engage at all with the Trump administration on a defense supplemental that our Department of Defense needs. We didn't do that. When you guys were in the majority and President Biden was president, we rolled up our sleeves and got to work to benefit the national security of our nation, which is what Lindsey Graham was always about. So let's honor Lindsey Graham. Let's have a strong vote on the sanctions bill that's named after him. But to my Democratic colleagues, you want to honor Lindsey Graham? Then let's start debating the NDAA. Quit blocking it. I've never seen that before in my entire time here. That doesn't help anything. All it does is undermine our national security and our troops. You're doing that. Lindsey wouldn't be for that. And let's start engaging on a defense supplemental. We need it. We did it when you were in the majority. We did it when Biden was in the White House. And a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle know that what they're doing is wrong, and I still haven't heard a good explanation. I know the far left is driving the energy of the party on the Democratic side right now, and they don't like the military, and they don't like supporting our troops. I know that. But the vast majority of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I know them. Let's get going on the NDAA. Let's get going on the defense supplemental bill. That's exactly what Senator Graham would be arguing today. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
I recognize the Democrat whip.
we start with this little document called the United States Constitution. Every one of us is sworn to uphold and defend this document. And we go to Article 1, the first article in the Constitution, Section 8, and it spells out with clarity who declares war under this Constitution: the Congress of the United States. We're now engaged in a war in Iran. Did the Congress declare war on Iran? No. Did the President even ask Congress to declare war on Iran? No. Well, were there public hearings in Congress about this decision to invade Iran, to attack Iran? No. Did this President of the United States go to the allies of the United States, like the NATO allies, to discuss the invasion of Iran? No. This President decided that we would go to war on his own, strictly on his own, without regard for what the Constitution requires. Now, I'm glad to concede that there have been many presidents who've gone to war under similar circumstances, but almost without exception, they at least took the case to the American people directly or through Congress. This president did not. So where are we today? $88 billion. That's how much has been spent so far in Iran. We're in the 5th month of the first year of a never-ending war that this president promised over and over again at his rallies would never, ever, ever happen under his watch. Now we have the senator from Alaska coming to the floor, raising questions about why we aren't moving on certain items. It's because there has been no involvement in the decision process that led up to these. Do you know what the increase is in defense spending? The increase in defense spending for next year? 40% of the Department of Defense budget. 40%. Why? We have an $88 billion war going on in Iran. There are those of us who have serious doubts that that is the right thing to do. We look at the Straits of Hormuz. Before we invaded Iran, they were open for the transport of energy, oil, and fertilizers. Now they are virtually closed because of President Trump's decision to invade Iran. Does it have any impact on you personally? Filled your gas tank lately? Do you know what's going on there? The cost of gasoline is going through the roof because of the invasion of Iran and the decision to move forward. So you can tell from my comments here that I have serious doubts that we're doing the right thing in Iran. I'm not going to be a defender of Iran. I've called for sanctions on that country over and over again for their misconduct. But to sit here and argue that we are somehow shirking our constitutional and congressional responsibility by not funding this war is to ignore the obvious. This was the president's decision to go forward with this war. My advice to him, over many years that I've served in Congress, it is easier to start a war than it is to end it. And we're learning that right now. The Straits of Hormuz are still at risk, and other parts of the world are at risk because of that decision. It's not the right decision. Let me also say a word about Lindsey Graham. Lindsey was my friend, on some issues my ally. He did things for me which I thought were politically risky, but to help, for example, to pass the DREAM Act. It was Lindsey Graham who was the sole Republican who would co-sponsor my bipartisan DREAM Act each year. I respect him so much for doing it. It was a political risk for him to do it. But either for me personally, God bless him, or for the thousands of young people who were facing deportation, he stuck his neck out for me. That's why I went to the service yesterday in respect to this man. I do respect him. We didn't agree on everything, particularly when it came to issues of war. There are serious differences, but there are many things that united us. The gentleman from Alaska raises the question of what would Lindsey do. I'm sure we can come up with our own interpretation. Now here's the bottom line moving forward. We have got to reach a bipartisan agreement on how to fund this government after September 30th, when this particular Congress ends and a new, budget ends and a new budget starts. I want to do that. Senator Murray wants to do it. I think Senator Collins would like to do it. But now we have to do it together on a bipartisan basis. We come to an agreement on the top line of how to reach a budget, and then we start setting out on appropriation bills. I've been fortunate to serve in the Appropriations Committee in the House and the Senate. I've seen some extraordinary bipartisan good work. We can have it again, but we've got to sit down and in good faith start working toward a conclusion. A conclusion that gives 40% increase to the Department of Defense and 0 increase to the rest of the government is a mistake. It's a serious mistake. We have important things that need to be done to help families that are struggling with the cost of living. And so to the senator from Alaska, I just disagree with you on the premise. We can and should work on a bipartisan basis, and it needs to start with next year's budget. Mr. President, last month, the Supreme Court paved the way for the Trump administration to end a program called Temporary Protected Status designation without any judicial review. The Supreme Court's conservative supermajority has supercharged President Trump's mass deportation campaign, with devastating consequences for temporary protected status holders and the American communities who rely on them. Temporary protected status under American law was intended to prevent the deportation of immigrants to countries where it's not safe to return. Countries where it's not safe to return. By law, a TPS designation can only be made or extended in increments of 6, 12, or 18 months. It is truly temporary in nature. Ahead of every TPS expiration, the Secretary of State must reassess the conditions in the countries and decide whether to renew the designation or let it end. To take one example, there is no question that Haiti is unsafe. The Department of State, our Department of State, has issued a level 4 travel advisory telling Americans it is unsafe to travel to Haiti due to the risk of crime, kidnapping, terrorism, and civil unrest. That's the official statement of the Department of State of the Trump administration. So why has the Trump administration terminated TPS for Haiti and many other countries where it's not safe to return? Some of my Republican colleagues who claim that TPS for countries like Haiti must end simply because it's the nature of the program, that it's temporary. Here's the thing. Since 1990, 36 years ago, when TPS was established, there have been 30 TPS designations. Even before the Trump administration, at least 10 of them to countries like Angola, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone had their designations made and then officially terminated. They were temporary. In some cases, like Haiti, conditions have never been safe enough to justify a termination. Haitian TPS holders have bought homes in the United States, started American families, and become part of our community. Members on both sides of the aisle oppose deporting these Haitian immigrants. In fact, our former Senate colleague, and my friend, Republican Mike DeWine, now the Republican governor of Ohio, called the Trump administration's decision to terminate Haiti's TPS, quote, a mistake and a job killer that is, quote, not in the best interest of the United States nor Ohio. Let me say parenthetically, Mike DeWine is my friend. We're opposite political parties. We served together in the Senate. It was Mike who encouraged me to join him and his wife when they visited Haiti, and I saw it for the first time. It opened my eyes to the poverty and danger of that island country. The Trump-Mullen administration has ignored the comments of Governor DeWine and others. Instead, ICE is preparing to target Haitian immigrants for arrest and deportation as early as this week. Immigrants who've been lawfully present in the United States for years now risk being deported. This is all so that Donald Trump and his trusted advisor, Stephen Miller, can meet their 2,000 arrests a day quota. They are not looking for the worst of the worst with these Haitians. They are not looking for terrorists, murderers, sexual predators, human traffickers. It's just whether they're Haitian or not Haitian. It is time for Congress to give these long-term residents the security that they deserve. That's why I'm calling for the passage of the Secure Act, legislation that will provide certainty for these individuals and their communities by giving the ability to apply for legal permanent residency. Later today, my friend and colleague, Senator Van Hollen of Maryland, will ask for unanimous consent to pass this bill. I join him and appeal to my colleagues in the name of humanity. For God's sake, don't send these people back to an island which we have already declared is too dangerous for any American to visit. Let them stay safe with their children and families here in the United States until things have improved in Haiti. If they are a threat in any way to any person in America, they need to leave. But if they are leading good lives, doing the best they can for them and their families, give them a chance. It is not too much to ask, and to deport them into this dangerous situation is not consistent with the basic values of America. Mr. President, I ask that the following statement on unrelated topics be placed in a record, and I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.
Without objection and without objection. And the clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We're in a quorum call.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, in a few minutes, I'm going to ask unanimous consent to pass the Secure Act to ensure that we don't force individuals who've been legally residing in the United States under temporary protective status, some for as many as 27 years, to return to countries where they will face danger, and instead to provide them with a secure path toward lawful permanent residence. The need for Congress to do this, to take this step, has never been more urgent, because just over a month ago, the Trump-packed Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, allowed the administration to move forward with terminating temporary protective status for hundreds of thousands of individuals who originally came to the United States from Haiti and Syria, and to force them back to countries where their lives would be at risk. That decision puts them and other TPS holders at risk of deportation to countries where violence, instability, and humanitarian crises continue to threaten their lives. There are already reports that ICE is planning to target Haitian TPS holders for deportation as soon as this week, which would force hundreds of thousands of people to return to a country that our State Department warns is unsafe for travel. In other words, the Trump administration would force people back to a country where the State Department says, don't go there because it's unsafe. The Trump administration has also moved to lift lower court orders preventing the termination of TPS for other countries as well, putting thousands more lives at risk. In other words, these lower courts have said they've paused the ability for the administration to deport people on TPS, but the administration is moving to deport them anyway. In 1990, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, came together to create the TPS program because we all agreed that keeping our neighbors safe should not be a partisan issue. When conditions in another country make it unsafe for people to return, America should not force those people back into harm's way. And for over 3 decades, that bipartisan principle has guided the TPS program. I think we all recall the Trump administration, at least the president, promised that they were going to target the, quote, worst of the worst. But that's not what they've been doing. Instead, it has targeted people, in the case of TPS recipients, with lawful status, targeting people who are here legally. TPS recipients are people who have already been determined that it would be dangerous to force them to return to their countries of origin. They are here legally, and the TPS eligibility requirements are very strict. Recipients undergo repeated vetting and background checks. They work, they pay taxes, raise families, start businesses, and contribute every day to communities across this country. Many have lived here for years, others for decades. They become part of the fabric of our communities. And yet the Trump administration's actions and recent reckless Supreme Court decisions place all of that at risk. The administration terminated work permits for Haitian and Syrian TPS holders on Monday. So people who had been legally here, had work permits, they've been terminated. And for those who also applied for asylum, the administration's new policy announced just this week would funnel their pending asylum claims directly into deportation proceedings without ever receiving a hearing. So even people who could show individual cause of certain harm or danger could be deported under these new procedures. It's all part of the same effort to strip legal protections from people who have followed the rules. Due to our country's broken immigration system, the TPS program is the only legal pathway for many to remain in the United States and keep out of harm's way. And the court's decision is tearing up that pathway for many TPS holders, even as the facts on the ground are clear. As I said, if you go to the State Department website, it says, and I quote, "Do not travel to Haiti," unquote. There are warning signs on that website of violent crime, gang activity, kidnappings, and widespread instability. In the case of Syria, Syria continues to face armed conflict, terrorism, and an ongoing humanitarian crisis. The State Department warns, and I quote, it's from our State Department, "Do not travel to Syria for any reason." That's what the State Department says, and yet the President and the Trump administration want to force people to go to Syria. In other words, the same conditions that led the United States to grant these individuals TPS in the first place remain true, and yet the Trump administration wants to send them to these countries. So the State Department warns against travel, but wants us to believe that it's safe for TPS recipients to be forced to return. What has changed is this administration's determination to dismantle basic humanitarian protections that have been part of our bipartisan tradition in order to enact their mass deportation agenda. And now this Supreme Court has rubber-stamped this administration's ongoing reckless efforts to gut the TPS program so they can terminate countries' designations across the board to advance that mass deportation agenda. The Trump rubber-stamp Supreme Court, on a 6-3 decision, made the decision that rather than follow the letter of the law as Congress enacted it, the Department of Homeland Security can do whatever it wants and free from judicial scrutiny. As Justice Kagan wrote in her dissent, she was one of 3 justices dissenting from that Supreme Court decision, she said, quote, "After today, a secretary can announce to the world that she didn't consult with anyone. Moreover, that she didn't evaluate country conditions at all before making, extending, or terminating a TPS designation. And the courts will be powerless to intervene, even though Congress loaded up the TPS statute with requirements about the altogether different way the secretary is supposed to make her decision," end quote. In other words, Justice Kagan pointed out the statute does make clear there should be a determination about whether or not an action taken to terminate TPS would in fact lead to harm. And Congress should not just sit back and allow this to happen. Decisions affecting hundreds of thousands of lives should be based on careful consideration of conditions on the ground, not political ideology or predetermined outcomes. This decision makes one thing unmistakably clear, that we, the Congress, should act to reaffirm what was clearly our intent when we passed the TPS statutes to begin with. And for years, TPS recipients have lived in constant uncertainty, and every extension brings another deadline. Every new administration brings another question about the lives they have built here will disappear with the stroke of a pen. This is no way to treat people who have been here legally and have contributed much to our country. That is why we should pass the Secure Act, legislation that provides qualified TPS and deferred enforced departure recipients with a pathway to legal permanent residence after years of continuous presence in the United States. It protects applicants while their cases are pending and shields eligible individuals from deportation during the application process. It provides work authorization and travel authorization. It also protects applicants' information from being used for immigration enforcement except in limited circumstances, and it increases transparency, which I would hope we would all support, by requiring the Department of Homeland Security to explain and justify future decisions to terminate TPS designations, something that they have failed to do. Most importantly, it provides the certainty these families deserve after years, in many cases decades, of living here legally in the United States. Mr. President, we've long used TPS to provide refuge to people who would otherwise face extraordinary danger if forced to return to their countries of origin. And they have sought safety and stability here. They have built new lives in our country and made lasting contributions to our communities. And the Secure Act recognizes that reality. As I said, we should not be forcing these individuals back to countries where our own State Department has determined it would be dangerous to go. The Supreme Court decision does not have to be the end of the story. We can write the end of the story, and it's our responsibility as a Congress to preserve that bipartisan congressional intent from back in 1990. And we must provide that certainty that these individuals deserve. So, Mr. President, notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged and that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S-2106. I further ask consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Missouri.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. Mr. President, I object to this mass amnesty bill. Last week, Democrats asked the Senate to extend Haitian temporary protected status. Today, they've dropped the quotation marks. Instead of extending temporary status, this legislation would convert temporary status into permanent status. Green cards, permanent settlement. At least the bill last week continued the same old Washington lie. Today, Democrats finally admit what this scheme was always designed to be. Temporary was always meant to be permanent. It's the final stage of the scam. But that's how Democrats do mass amnesty. First, they declare an emergency. Then they import hundreds of thousands of people. They then extend the program over and over and over. Then they unleash activist lawyers against anyone who tries to enforce the deadline. And when the American people finally elect a president to end this chaos, to end this abuse, Democrats demand mass amnesty. And when the American people finally elect a president who enforces the law, Democrats change the law and hand out green cards. That's what this bill does. It turns a program created for temporary emergencies into a pipeline for green cards and citizenship. Not only for people who have temporary status, not only for people who once had TPS, this bill reaches beyond our borders and allows people who were already removed from this country to apply for permanent residency from abroad. Think about how crazy that is. The law was enforced, the alien was removed, the case was closed. Yet Democrats want to erase the removal, reopen the border, and bring that person back with a green card. Under the radical new Democratic immigration platform, deportation isn't deportation. It's merely an inconvenience before a green card arrives. This bill does not merely reward those who broke our laws and remained in our country. It reaches around the entire globe to reverse deportations and to restart mass migration. But even that is not enough. This bill also creates an ICE blackout. Information provided in these applications can't be used for immigration enforcement. The bill even threatens penalties against law enforcement who improperly use the information. So Democrats want the information we have about foreigners to be placed behind a legal shield so it cannot be used to enforce immigration law. Republicans want to handcuff illegal criminals. Democrats want to handcuff law enforcement officers so they can't do their jobs. They're not hiding the choice anymore. They will punish the officer before they punish the illegal alien. Why are legal aliens more important to them now than protecting American citizens? Oh, but it doesn't stop there. This bill ensures that any president, any future president, can't end TPS. So what's missing from the bill? Americans. American citizens. And the impact mass migration is having on our people. This bill has no consideration for American wages, no consideration for American housing, no consideration of schools, hospitals, or communities, no consideration of whether mass migration serves the national interest of the American people. Every question is about what the foreign country needs. No question about what America needs or what American families need. That tells you everything that you need to know. To today's Democrat Party, immigration policy is written for foreign governments, immigration lawyers, activist groups, and left-wing organizations waiting to file the next lawsuit. The American people are treated as a logistical obstacle. Their votes, our votes, are an inconvenience. Their communities, our communities, are an afterthought. Their country is treated as common property for the rest of the world. Democrats are becoming more and more radical by the day on this issue. Yesterday, they insisted temporary programs must never end. Today, they demand permanent residency for all. Permanent residency for people who already left. Legal shields against law enforcement, and more ammunition for activist lawsuits. And they'll turn around and call us cruel. You'll hear it shortly. It'll be said about me blocking this bill. Let me speak clearly to my Democrat colleagues. There is nothing compassionate about betraying your own citizens, the very citizens who put you in office. There is nothing compassionate about flooding the labor market with more foreign workers while Americans struggle for a decent wage. There is nothing compassionate about flooding the housing market and putting young families behind the 8 ball. There is nothing compassionate about diluting American citizenship. America is a nation, not a global waiting room, not a refugee camp, not a lifetime stay at a taxpayer-funded hotel. Our immigration laws exist to serve the American people. Foreign nationals do not have a right to permanent settlement here. Today I speak on behalf of the American people who have been ripped off by this scam for far too long. No more. We had an election on this issue. The Democrats have not got the message. They want the United States of America to be a global refugee camp. Cloaked behind their compassion, there's no compassion for the American people. The guy that swings the hammer, who's working 7 days a week so he can pay for the benefits of an illegal alien who they don't ever want to leave this country. The American people are a sovereign people who have the right to decide who enters this country, who remains, and who has to leave. This bill reverses that principle. This Democrat bill tells the American people that their elections cannot end a temporary program, that the president cannot enforce the law, that their officers cannot use information in front of them, that their country belongs to everyone but them. Only the migrant's claim matters. Only the foreign country matters. Only the ambulance-chasing immigration lawyer matters. I reject all of that completely, in public, for the world to see, because I stand by my brothers and sisters of this country. Last week, I objected to the Democrats' attempt to give 350,000 Haitians an extended TPS. Today, I'm objecting to this Democrat attempt to give millions of illegal aliens mass amnesty, green cards, and work authorizations. I will always object to this mass amnesty. I will always object to this mass migration. I will always object to putting American workers last. I will always object to tying the hands of our law enforcement. So therefore, Mr. President, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to make a couple things very clear. The president has a mass deportation agenda, even though what the president says is that he's focused on going after the worst of the worst. We had a vote on a resolution here in the Senate not that long ago about going after the worst of the worst, and it passed unanimously. I think it was a voice vote. There's no argument there. The issue with these TPS holders is that they are here legally with work permits. In fact, they're among the most vetted people in the country. Every year, they go through security and background checks in order to renew their work permits. And the reason we provide them with the opportunity to stay here is because there's been a determination that their countries of origin are such dangerous places that their lives would be put at risk. Places like Haiti, places like Syria. Where our own government has determined it is too dangerous to go. And they warn people about going to those countries. And yet what this Trump administration action would do is force people back into danger in those countries. That's what the Trump administration wants to do, and that's what this Supreme Court, on a 6-3 vote, allows them to do. It allows them not even to have to make that determination in any serious way about what the circumstances are in the country these people would be forced back into. So there's a whole lot of misinformation that was put out there about this piece of legislation. I will just say that in my state of Maryland, many of these folks on TPS have become very important and valuable members of our community. As I said, many have been here for years and years, in some cases, decades. And by the way, they are paying taxes. They are paying federal and state taxes. They're paying into the Social Security Trust Fund. And in many cases, they've started small businesses that actually create more economic opportunity for everybody in the community and the state. Go look it up. A lot of these TPS holders are small businessmen and women. They're hiring people in our communities in our state. And yet these are the people, some of the most vetted individuals in the country, people who pay state and local and federal taxes, that the Trump administration wants to send back to countries where we say it's dangerous to go. And so that's why we're here on the floor right now, because the first wave of this is about to happen. And the Trump administration is about to deport folks who came here from Haiti, who've been here under TPS, this protective status, and now they want to force them back into harm's way. We want to uphold what had been a bipartisan position, which is that we as a country should not do that. We should not send people who have this legal status now back to countries where they will face certain danger. And so it's disappointing to hear that Republican colleagues don't want to move forward on this piece of legislation, but this debate is not over, not here in the Senate, not in the House, and not in communities across the United States. And with that, I yield the floor. I see my colleague from California, who's been such an important and strong voice on these issues, on the floor, so I will yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, I'm pleased to join my colleagues today in support of Senator Van Hollen's Secure Act. Across the country right now, hundreds of thousands of Haitian men, women, and children are terrified. They're terrified for their futures, for their children's futures. They're terrified about being forced back to a country that is gripped by a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Nearly 1.5 million Haitians have been displaced by gang violence. Food insecurity is widespread. Basic services have collapsed. It's a country that the State Department warns Americans not to travel to because of the risk of kidnapping, violent crime, and civil unrest. Think about that for a second. The Trump administration itself is warning Americans not to travel to Haiti because of how unsafe it is. Yet the same administration wants to force over 300,000 Haitian nationals who until very recently held temporary protected status to go there. Now, the president has made it very clear for years what he thinks about immigrants from Haiti. And we've received reports in the past few days that the Department of Homeland Security is preparing for a mass roundup and swift deportation of these families in the coming days. So now, thanks to the president's hostility towards immigrants, TPS holders from countries in turmoil, many of whom have lived in the United States for years, if not decades, are now in danger and at the mercy of this cruel administration. But the fact of the matter is, the American people do not support the president's goal of kicking these men, women, and children out and forcing them back to a nation steeped in danger and turmoil. Because the American people recognize the fundamental fact that TPS holders who were legally granted protection in the United States, who registered with the federal government, who passed background checks, and received authorization to live and to work here, are human beings. Human beings that deserve respect and dignity. And we have a moral obligation to help when we can. More than that, most Americans recognize how much TPS holders and immigrants more broadly contribute to our country. The economic, social, and cultural benefits they've provided as they've worked and lived among us for years, developing strong roots in our communities. Yes, over time, TPS holders become our neighbors, our co-workers, and our friends. More than 94% of TPS holders who participate in the labor force as of 2017 are nurses and construction workers, vital jobs for the people of the United States and for our economy. They're home health aides, hotel workers, and entrepreneurs. Collectively, they contribute around $29 billion to the U.S. economy every year and pay more than $7.8 billion in federal, payroll, state, and local taxes annually as well. That's right, they pay nearly $8 billion in taxes every year. If more than 300,000 Haitian workers suddenly dropped out of the workforce, the impacts are going to be very real and very sudden. And we can't forget that many are raising American children, not only as caregivers for other people's children, but as parents to nearly 400,000 U.S. citizen children. And that impact is only magnified when you pull back and consider the more than 1 million people who had TPS as of early 2025 and have been targeted by this administration and its cruel mass detention and mass deportation agenda. So, colleagues, I'm going to say something that I don't say very often. I agree with Governor Mike DeWine, the Republican governor of Ohio, who has called ending TPS a, quote, mistake, end quote, that's going to bring steep economic toll with it. Temporary protected status exists exactly for moments like this, when countries like Haiti, along with Venezuela, South Sudan, Afghanistan, and others, are experiencing exactly the kind of crisis that Congress had in mind when it created this program on a bipartisan basis. But this administration is choosing to turn its back on the people that this program was meant to help and protect, while hurting our country in the process. So we need to do more to protect people who have built their lives here and who have contributed so much to our country. So I want to thank Senator Van Hollen for trying to pass the Secure Act. He has my support, and I urge all of you to support the Secure Act as well. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Know it now. This morning's CNN poll, right over my shoulder here, is further confirmation that Trump has completely lost the trust of the American people. Americans can see it, smell it, feel it. Trump's priorities are completely out of whack. He's concerned not with the average citizen and making their lives better, just his own ego. Just look at some of these numbers. More than 3 in every 4 Americans say that Trump's disastrous war on Iran hasn't been worth the cost. The same numbers say they've experienced hardship because of gas prices, 79%. And when asked, does Trump have the right priorities, 73% say no. A record 73% of Americans think Trump hasn't focused enough on the most pressing issues they face. Pick any poll, pick any issue, you'll come to the same conclusion. Trump is totally out of touch He is hurting America and not listening to America. No one likes what you're doing. Are you listening, Donald? No one likes what you're doing. Look at those numbers. They should make Donald Trump hang his head in shame. 72% disapprove of how he's conducting the war in Iran. 79% disapprove of him on gas prices. 73% say he has the wrong priorities for them. When the overwhelming majority of Americans say you're taking the country in the wrong direction, you better change course. Trump and his party can either take the hint or take a hike when it comes in November. Democrats have been clear on appropriations. Democrats have been clear from the start. We want to fund the government, avoid a shutdown, pass strong bipartisan appropriation bills that improve people's lives. Bipartisan negotiations are ongoing, and Senate Democrats are working in good faith to reach an agreement and keep appropriations process moving forward. We're fighting for a bipartisan funding package, not partisan bills that bankroll Donald Trump's war agenda while leaving working families behind. Any CR must be bipartisan. It must keep the government open without abandoning the needs of working families or giving Donald Trump a blank check for his destructive agenda. There's a responsible path forward. Senate Democrats are ready to take it. Republicans must meet us to get that done. On Medicare drug costs, Trump's crusade against Americans' health care costs continues every single day. Listen to this. Yesterday, Trump doubled prescription drug costs for millions of seniors by making cuts to Medicare drug plans. Just 2 days before Medicare's 61st anniversary, no less, he is cutting the dollars we need and doubled prescription drug costs for millions of seniors. Can Trump get any more heartless? We're talking about seniors splitting pills in half to ration life-saving drugs or skipping meals to afford their medication at the pharmacy counter. That's despicable. This is just the latest salvo in Trump's war on Americans' health care. A year ago, Trump ransacked over $1 trillion from healthcare system to bankroll massive tax giveaways to the wealthiest Americans and corporations. And since then, millions of people have lost their coverage altogether, while tens of millions get slammed, with premiums doubling, tripling, even quadrupling. But I guess that wasn't enough for Donald. Now he's coming after seniors, millions of them, by raising their prescription drug costs. In Trump's America, families are fighting for their lives while the rich get richer. On the Iran war, Trump's more concerned about protecting himself from the repercussions of his failed war in Iran than protecting our troops who are in the line of fire. As Trump twiddles his thumbs without any plan for how to end his reckless misadventure, our service members are facing down barrage after barrage of Iranian missiles and drones. Donald, posting another lie on Truth Social won't stop the missiles from flying. Thumping your chest won't bring down the crushing gas prices you've sent skyrocketing, and brushing casualties under the rug doesn't get our men and women in uniform out of harm's way. And those whose names were eliminated before they put them back do not come back to life when you just simply take their name off the roll. There's only one way to do that, to do all of that. Bring our troops home. End the war. Democrats will soon force another vote on our War Powers Resolution to end this aimless war and bring our troops back home to their families. Every second Trump prolongs this war, our service members' lives are at risk. Senate Republicans, stand up for troops, not the president who sent them to war without a plan, without a mission, without an exit strategy. Senate Republicans, stand up with the American people and come join us in ending this war. Yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection. Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.